that we do have members of the public who from time to time like to share their views with us. Their views are more important than ours because we work for them. And we do have some individuals who come forward regarding the placement of early learning and school readiness VPK within our budget. As the committee knows, the draft proposal that is before us would move VBK and early learning to the Department of Education as opposed to being housed in the 3 different places where those programs are housed now. And we do have a speaker, the distinguished former publisher of the Miami Herald, Mr. David Lawrence, who's with us today. And because of his airplane connections, he came all the way up here today to speak to us on this issue. I'd like to take him now. And then if there are other individuals who have airplane connections who also would like to speak, I'll be happy to take them before we go into the budget presentation. Mr. Lawrence, thank you very much for being here. Your distinguished career in journalism and business and advocacy for good causes dates you and will post-date you. You are a living legend in our state, and you're recognized.
I'm delighted to be a reformed journalist, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Senate and the Chair, I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about this issue. I retired because I became deeply interested in this, thinking it had a lot to do with the future of community and country. I don't claim to be an expert, but I've learned a great deal since I, quote, retired, unquote, a dozen years ago, having decided to spend all my energies on helping the children of Florida have the best possible chance to succeed in school and life. Like many of you, I am a full product of Florida public education, secondary and higher education. You and I live in a state whose very future depends on the power of early investment. We live in a state where perhaps 30% of the children start school way behind, and then most of those soon get further behind. A state where 28% of all children in 4th grade cannot read at minimally proficient levels. More than half of 10th graders cannot read on grade level. And a country where literally 75% of all 17 to 24-year-olds cannot enter the American military. Can't enter the American military because they've got an academic problem, a criminal justice problem, a substance abuse problem, or a physical problem. So I regard what we're talking about today as a matter of national security. If you came to know me, you would find out I am not an ideologue. Indeed, I think this country works best somewhere toward the middle, and I believe that all of us can work together to do what is right for children. So in the spirit of my 35 years in journalism, I share with you just 4 headlines and just 3 closing points. Number 1, children can be terribly behind by the time they enter formal school. We know from the research that if 100 children leave 1st grade as poor readers, by the end of 4th grade, 88 of the 100 are still poor readers. Number 2, the first years of life are crucial. 90% of a child's brain grows by age 5. Children learn in an extraordinary number of ways. For instance, when parents read with them from their earliest times, or when children sit in a shopping cart at Publix and mommy or daddy makes it an early learning experience about shapes and sizes and colors and numbers. So I argue, and I think the evidence is there, that learning occurs or does not way before a child enters a formal classroom. I also believe that much is learned from play, including the power of imagination and how to build relationships with others, and those are lifelong skills. Number 3, children grow in many ways, yes, cognitively and physically, but also emotionally, socially, and spiritually. We know from the research that 1/3 of all children entering kindergarten in the United States of America cannot pay attention in class. Number 4, quality out-of-home options are crucial in the early years. I see that with 3 of my own children who, in fact, have children themselves. The reality is child care for them. They have spouses who are also working, but child care is the real world in a country where 2/3 of women with children between birth and age 5 work outside the home. So building on that and assuming that while AWI has been a good and caring home for VPK and school readiness programs, I sense that at some point it may longer exist, no longer exist, and I want to make 3 closing points. Number 1, at the very heart of my argument is that VPK and school readiness simply must be housed together, need to be connected because in fact they are connected, and must be about quality because only real quality leads to genuinely good outcomes for children. Good child care is not simply a matter of slots and cost and convenience, and brain-stimulating child care is fundamental in child outcomes. Number 2, at our country's wisest, education is a lifelong continuum with a caring, knowledgeable parent at the core of everything, and then accompanied by quality prenatal care, quality child care, quality pre-K, and quality through all the years of education, elementary, secondary, higher education, and beyond, and that the next year should always build upon the previous years. So number 3, where then to put these 2 arms of preparedness for school and for life? That is our state's early learning care and development programs, both school readiness and VPK. One option, obviously, is the Department of Children and Families. I deeply admire the people of DCF and think the governor has selected someone first-rate in David Wilkins to lead that agency. But some of you may know I just chaired a blue ribbon panel looking into the lessons of the horrific death of a little girl named Nubia who was killed in a most evil way. And I strongly feel that DCF already has plenty to do. I see the best option being the Department of Education. These are early learning programs, and their most appropriate home is DOE. And if housed there, the department clearly needs to respect private child care and faith-based providers just as fully as public school providers, because all providers have an equal stake in quality. I want to close with the briefest of quotations. This one from Dr. James Heckman, who is the Nobel Prize-winning economist, who tells us the wisest path to public education reform in the United States of America is, quote, to improve children sent to schools. So members of the Senate, I believe that's our opportunity in Florida. I have never lost my idealistic soul. I imagine, as I hope you do, in Florida, where all children have a real chance to live and contribute to the American dream. Thank you for listening and caring, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Are there any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. That was a wonderful presentation, by the way.
Went to Manatee High School, sir.
There you go. That'll do it to you. Okay. Sarasota better, but Manatee wasn't.
Oh, shoot.
Anyhow.
I only missed it by 1 county, though.
What can I say? You know, one of the problems that we have, voluntary pre-K and all of the other learning programs that we have, and you touched on several items, and nobody ever wants to touch the third rail of all of this, but is the state responsible for teaching a kid how to read? Is the state responsible for getting them ready to go to school? Is the state responsible to teach them good habits and getting along, playing well with others? And we never want to address the problem. What about the parents? What about the home? And, we can do all of the early learning. Pretty soon we're going to have them coming out of the womb when we start teaching them. When do we actually go ahead and address the problem of the number of parents who don't know how to parent, the number of parents who don't take responsibility for their kids? And we dump all of this back on the state of Florida. I saw a neat movie called Mao's Last Dancer. I don't know if you saw it. It was a fantastic movie. It was about a kid in China. And the Chinese government decided this kid was going to be a ballet dancer. So somewhere around the age of 4, they took him away from his family and made him a ballet dancer. In fact, he's a wonderful ballet dancer. He dances for the Houston Ballet right now. But at what point do we figure out what we've got to do to get parents to start parenting? We keep trying to do something with the children, but nobody ever wants to touch it. Nobody ever wants to say that we've got too many parents that don't want to do anything. So I really would, because I really appreciated your comments, and I got a funny feeling you've been at this game long enough where you might have some comments that would help me.
I'm one of 9 children, Senator. All of us grew up on a farm, and the farm went broke. That's how we moved to Florida. All 9 of us were graduated from either Florida or Florida State. We deeply...
But in spite of that, you got a good job later on.
Exactly, despite that. Well, it was journalism, so who knows?
Well, that's true, too.
That's true, too. I have 5 children. Been married 47 years. Have 5 children ranging in age from 26 to 46. I have grandchildren. I just had dinner last night with one of my grandchildren who is 7 years old. And she just finished the whole Harry Potter book at age 7. What was the difference? The first difference had everything to do with parents. Nothing more important at the core of everything we do than a caring, knowledgeable parent. You and I are totally together on that. All my work focuses first on how do you get parents build the skills themselves so that they do right by their own children. I also spend a lot of time on the world of child care. 80% of child care in America, to be honest, is storage and warehousing. What you really want is brain-stimulating child care that doesn't depend on kids watching TV, which isn't that interactive, and children need real people speaking with them. Florida passed a pre-K program in 2002, went into effect in the school year 2005-2006. I'm not an ideologue, but if we're going to have a program in which this state is spending $360+ million, then by gosh, you ought to have a high-quality program. I'm not trying to revolutionize the world. I'm trying to make sure that we have the best possible chance in our state to have successful people. When I graduated from Manatee High, I apologize for mentioning this again, in Bradenton, Florida, it was 50 years ago last June. There were about 300 people in our class, senior class. A few of us went to college, and a lot of people became well diggers and other sorts of things. We were competing with people in Sarasota County and lots of other counties, and maybe around the United States. The fact of the matter is the future of this state depends on our children being able to compete with people in China and Singapore and Brazil and India. And no, I don't want to be China. I've been to China. I want to be America. But I want to be in a country where I live in safe and a secure community, and you won't do that unless we have as many successful adults as possible. And it just frightens me that a group of senior retired admirals and generals come out with a study 15 months ago that says 3 out of 4 people cannot enter the American military. That ought to scare everything right out of us. It begins with parents, but we're all partners. I'm not trying to take over the job of parents. I don't want a nanny state. I want a state that says if you're going to spend the public's money, and this is the public's money, then you're going to make sure you have a program that is focused on early learning and is deeply respectful to parents but doesn't take over their job.
Other comments or questions? Well, thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for your presentation today and for all the work you do for the children of Florida. We're deeply grateful to you.
Thank you, sir.